Hello everyone. Welcome to the Jabra Asia Pacific Virtual Partner Conference. In this panel discussion, we'll be touching base on the topic of hybrid ways of working. My name is Craig Durr and I work with Wainhouse Research. We're a research and analyst firm that focuses exclusively on enterprise communication. Now, there's a lot of talk these days about hybrid work, but what constitutes a successful hybrid work model? Are we even using a standard definition of hybrid work, let alone implementing it with common best practices? I want to share highlights with you from some recent research that Wainhouse did in cooperation with Jabra. Companies are struggling to find the right equation for their own return to the office strategy. We've assembled the results of this research into a workable guide to help you understand and address the needs of your line of business stakeholders when you implement hybrid work. Our conclusion: you need a flexible strategy with adaptable technology, one that can withstand the adjustments that your company will inevitably make as you figure out your own hybrid work playbook. This is where IT will play a critical role in tying technology to hybrid work goals. And the panel discussion here will help you get there. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. Let's spend a moment and talk about some of these new signs of this new normal. And I'm sure you and your peers are seeing a lot of this. Here are some. You probably have more employees working in distributed work situations. We see video is becoming more commonplace, not just for people who typically work with video, but across the entire company. And probably one of the more interesting ones is that challenge to the daily routines, where you have employees having to move work productively and effectively from one location to the other. And I'm sure you're seeing this and dealing with this on a daily basis. Now, for both of you, you both have worldwide workforces, so let's start there. Share with us how you've had to help your employees adjust to this new normal.
With this hybrid work, it started back in 2021 with our Chief People Experience Officer, Payal Sani, started this Login for Your Day program. The Login for Your Day program allowed for flexible employees and their managers to define how and where they work in a flexible work experience. But it has created a really good outpouring in how the company has really rallied around for our organization to be able to work in defining this new way of working in this hybrid situation.
Now, let's go on to another area. Now, despite all the debate, one thing that did not take place is that the offices did not go away. There was a lot of talk about this several years ago, right? And they're here to stay. But for many, they have certainly changed. And I'm curious, let's talk about how you've had some of these changes in your workspace. Ken, you and I had a conversation about some of the changes you've made. Why don't you start off and share that?
Yeah, and specifically attending this fireside chat is paramount for where I'm speaking from here, because this is a great example of how we've kind of retrofitted and gone back to some of our workspaces. So we've taken a concerted effort in our plans that we were doing on how we were updating and building out new sites, and we want to create an aesthetic that's very casual and comfortable. As you see, I'm sitting here in a nice casual low seat comfy chair, but we want it to be able to be very equitable as well, so that I'm looking one-on-one, or if I have multiple people in here. So we worked very closely. This became a very close partnership internally with our global workplace solution, our global real estate organization, as well as externally. We had to develop really good partnerships with some of the folks sitting around this virtual table and other folks as well, some of our other technology partners. We wanted to really get the technology to really work well with the aesthetics and what we were looking to transcend within the office space. So part of that is in order to get to that point, we needed to really test things out. We do work under budgets. We can't just go out and go buy a lot of things. So we created a technology lab. We have a lab that's located, it's about 1,000 square feet. This lab allows us to test out not just the furniture, but the furniture with the technology to make sure that the aesthetics are there, that things are complementary, as well as when we go into these hybrid meetings. We've really gone back and made sure that we're kind of following along in this right journey, but it's been a very much more closer partnership with our real estate organization, not necessarily an after effect where we try to make the technology fit. So this has been a really good journey, and we're looking forward to how we continue to evolve this down the road.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because one of the evolutions that's taken place in the last year is that people that are managing the hybrid work tends to be a triad of several different functional areas: IT support, HR, and like you mentioned, facilities or corporate real estate. And it's really interesting how those synergies come together to really drive comfortable, productive environments for the workplace. Now, Mark, let me ask you a question in this workspace area. Now, are you experimenting with anything along the lines of hoteling or hot desking? Are you changing the way that people are coming into the office of having a dedicated work spot or maybe having more of a shared workspace as well?
But absolutely. I think experimenting is pretty much where we're at. There's a lot of unknowns in this space. And like you said, Ken and Craig, you made a great point. We really are partnering with our corporate real estate, our building services teams. We're putting together some pilots. We're identifying some different business units that really want to come back into the office and help us to find the right solution for shared desks versus dedicated desks, for more open collaboration spaces, for more collaboration solutions. I think there's a lot of unknown. And of course, Intel is a very diverse, very large organization. There's not going to be any one size fits all here as well. So flexibility, even in corporate real estate, which, I mean, you think about construction, building hard wall conference rooms, that takes time. Yeah. So they're doing a great job of looking out and seeing what kind of solutions are out there that you can put into place in a much shorter time frame and maybe adjust for the different business units that might be what their needs might change or they may evolve, because I don't think that even they know what their needs are going to be when they come back in the office. We're all learning together.
That's true. You know, there's an interesting way to look at this, that there's functional areas that a workplace can serve. The four that I've mentioned in the past have been concentration, collaboration, socialization, and learning. And learning is not just a teacher, student, audience environment. It actually could be the boardroom where there's a single person giving a presentation, educating those attendees in that room about that topic or that area. You know, we spoke about concentration spaces and collaboration spaces. What about those socialization spaces or those learning spaces? Are there any examples that you can share about that? I'll share one entry point. I've heard of companies taking large spaces and turning them more into flex spaces, utilizing devices and technology that allow that space to change over the course of the day. It might serve as a lecture hall in the beginning, but then it might be broken up into small pods for work groups or multiple video conferences or video monitors going forward. Any examples like that that you can share in terms of how you are looking at socialized spaces and learning spaces as well?
Really, we're adding more open collaboration spaces. We certainly had these already in the past. And we're trying to create an environment where people can engage locally. And that's one of the challenges is you have to find that balance between a local collaboration and an actual conference, because you really don't want to have a conference in an open collaboration space. So you have to make sure you have enough of both. And then that, of course, reduces your dedicated workspace because you have the same physical real estate. From a virtual learning space, I think that's an interesting one. We have training rooms, dedicated training rooms that we've leveraged in years past, and they haven't really been given the same treatment from a conferencing perspective because they're really mostly designed for local training. That's going to have to change. We're absolutely looking at these spaces, working to understand how can we put effective technology in there, and these are fairly large, so you got to find the right technology that's going to fit to enable both a local training class and some remote participants to all be equally included and engaged in that session.
Ken, Mark, thank you guys for sharing. This is some great insights in terms of how you're adapting to this situation and how this new normal is affecting you and your businesses. All right, we can agree this situation is new for many of us, and it's being complicated because these new challenges are being asked of you, the IT administrators, the IT decision makers, to help solve this. Now, help walk through some of these challenges as they're being felt by the end users. We're fortunate to have Ilya Bushkin from Microsoft. Ilya, how are you doing?
Great. Thank you so much for having me here.
Good. Hey, let's talk about end user challenges. We spoke about the situation. Let's talk about some of these things complicating it. Now, you're in a great position because not only are you a technologist trying to solve this, but you're an end user yourself. I see you on calls, you and I are on calls, you're working from home in hybrid work environments. Can you share with me from your personal experiences some of the ways that you are experiencing hybrid work?
Sure. It's an ongoing experiment, challenge, evolution, I think, for all of us. It's amazing to think that it's already been over 2 years of the pandemic work style, and a lot of change, a lot of transformation has happened in that 2 years. And I think Ken and Mark have mentioned some of the things that have been so key as changes in hybrid work that also address the fatigue I and many of us were feeling, especially early on in the pandemic. So one of those key changes has been, as I think it was Mark highlighted, thinking about all of our communications together instead of separate silos. So bringing together the meeting with the chats and channels and documents and looking at that as a life cycle instead of an instance. That has been key for many of our customers and for us at Microsoft, my team. One of the key things that addresses that really sort of flared up during the pandemic is the FOMO for meetings, the fear of missing out. So early on, we saw this avalanche of meetings. I think people crave human connection and interaction. And with the isolation that we had, it just dramatically increased, everything was a meeting. And now what we're seeing is a much healthier, I think, longer term approach to where I don't have to attend every meeting. I, in my browser right now, have open a recording of a meeting about my product area that happened yesterday that I chose not to attend so that I could actually go drop off my kids at school. And in that recording, I can view that recording in multiple speeds. I can actually go to, if my name was mentioned in the transcript, I can, because people who participated in that were in a room with a Teams room with an intelligent speaker, I actually have a transcript that tells me who in the room said what, that makes it much more readable. So I am okay not being there. But not just that meeting recording, I have all of the chat that happened during the meeting, which is now such an important modality. I actually participated in that chat while I was, sitting and waiting without participating in the meeting. I see the document or PowerPoint in our case that was edited. So I feel like I'm informed and participating, but I chose to use that hour of time differently.
In our research that we did with Jabra here, and we interviewed these line of business leaders, one of the top of mind concerns they had for their teams was meeting fatigue is real. It takes place. It happens, right? What are some things that Microsoft is doing to help people address fatigue?
Yeah. First, as you said, very, very real. And before you can address it, you need to understand the drivers of that fatigue. Some of the things that drive fatigue are not feeling like you can participate or be included. And so first, you have to be seen. Again, as humans, we read so much into nonverbal communication. And so as Ken and Mark also said, moving to a video-first culture, you've seen that in the product. When we entered into the pandemic, our maximum video view was 4 streams of video. That wasn't going to work in the pandemic. And so we've introduced, of course, 9-person video, then paging so you can get to, I don't remember the number, 50 plus. And then ways that we can sort of be seen that feel more natural, because the grid view is not fundamentally natural. And so introducing together mode where we can feel more connected with people. On top of that, once you can be seen, you have to be able to be heard, which is not always audio. So yes, we've improved audio so that you can sort of jump in and interrupt, but perhaps more importantly, improving the reactions and ability to raise hand and provide reactions in the meeting. and then improving the chat experience, which has really become a meeting within a meeting. Like we've seen chat be used to give everybody a voice. And so one of the things I'm super excited about that I'll just jump in as a product piece is Front Row, which is an experience for Teams rooms. I'm super excited that that actually has shipped now. It's something we started talking about just 6 months ago or so in the summer of 2021. We really tried to move quickly to address what we were hearing as people moved to being not all remote, but some in a room and some remote. And so one of the key things Front Row does is brings chat up to the front of the room so you can see that chat stream. And when you use it in combination with the mobile companion features we have in Teams Mobile, we make it very easy when you're in a room to react to chat from your mobile device, to sort of participate using both that room system and your personal device, which a lot of us do now. And of course, Front Row also displays raise hands, but not just who raised hands, the order in which they raised hands. And that cue is super important so that people don't feel like, hey, I raised my hand first. Why is, Ilya taking all the oxygen in the room, so to speak?
I love the fact that you've got not only hand raises, but a cue to know, respect people and to have that information. That's perfect to take advantage of that. Let's go into another challenge we found in this research, and it's around the idea of inclusivity, right? There's this equitable access challenge that now takes place, especially since we have so many people introduced to the idea of being in part of a meeting from their laptop. What they have there is a one box, one head scenario. Now we're evolving back to people coming back into the office, and now you have one box, 3 or 4 heads. So there's a challenge there, right? How do you give these people that are in the meeting room now equal access that they may have as if they were on their PC? Can you share some of the insights that Microsoft is looking at and features along that lines?
Sure. This is a deep topic of thought and exploration and experimentation for us. And as we actually have a facility called The Hive where we try every possible meeting room configuration with lots of different devices. And we bring through people to try these meetings. And in fact, we've been super fortunate. Our senior leadership team from our CFO and executive vice presidents have been super interested in this. They've actually come in and said, I want to do a meeting, see what this is like. And so we've really learned a lot from that experimentation. And one thing we've learned is that one size does not fit all. There will be a spectrum of room configurations, not just room sizes like we're all used to, but there will be different rooms that are suitable for different meeting types. Now that's the space itself. I am at least as excited, if not more excited, about what we can do to then enhance these spaces, every space, with our technology, partnering with our partners such as Jabra. And one of the things you mentioned is the challenge and the benefit that we can address or deliver with intelligent video. So the challenge is, frankly, one of the things that's led to exhaustion when you start to have hybrid meetings is having no clue of who's in the room, because you have a view that, in a bowling alley shaped room, people are just dots at the end of the table. You don't see who's in the room in the roster. And it's such a jarring experience relative to the last 2 years of everyone being remote. So by working with our partners and introducing AI on the edge, in the cameras, in the microphones, we can start to address that by saying the camera can actually recognize the people in the room and frame them. And as step one, we can create a video that gives every person their own frame and display that as one video. But I am as excited about what we're working on together as step two, where cameras like the Panicast 50 will send a separate video stream for each participant. And then that opens up a world of possibility where, as a remote person, I can pin Ken or AK or spotlight them for everyone in the meeting. And it's truly as if they had their own camera in the room.
Let me go ahead and touch a base on the third challenge that these line of business leaders shared about their end users. One of their concerns was getting their teams back to a time of productivity, especially with all the movement taking place, right? In the office environment, you're probably going from a shared space, such as a conference room, to a shared private space, such as maybe a shared desk or what have you. So there's a lot of movement taking place through the course of the day, let alone if you're going from home to office to coffee shop or what have you. But I'm sure you guys have thought about that in the product. So what are some of the ways that you're trying to help alleviate that friction of getting back to a productive state of work as you move around from location to location?
Definitely customers have asked us to broaden our thinking about sort of space and productivity. Now we really have to think about, well, what's everything potentially in between? You mentioned that personal space, there seems to be a pretty significant shift to temporary personal space, if you will, or shared personal space, hot desking.
Right.
And so we've really had to think about, what device am I going to carry with me? And what does it mean to move around and to be really rapidly productive with a Teams meeting or in Teams everywhere I go? And so as such, we've introduced new experiences on new categories of hardware. For example, Teams panels. So these are the panels that you see sort of on the outside of a room in the hall. In the past, not being too negative, but they maybe had relatively low value. They would show the calendar. But now we're hearing customers say, hey, I want to be able to see how many people are in the room on that panel before I go into the room. Mm-hmm. And if it's maybe too many people, I want to be able to quickly be told where's the nearest open space and add that meeting, copy it or move it there. And so that's what we're doing with Teams panels by getting signal, again, from cameras like the Panicast 50 that lets us count people based on that AI, and then connecting with other room systems where we can see, what rooms are not occupied. We've added digital signage playing capabilities to working with popular third-party content management systems to Teams rooms. That's going to be coming to Teams displays. We'll add more form factors. So really trying to think about sort of the holistic experience of show information on screens, enable people to take quick actions using some combination of their personal device and maybe a panel or a room, direct people where they need to go, and then make a device theirs very quickly.
Those are some great insights. Ilya, thank you so much for contributing. I really appreciate it.
Thank you again for having me.
Now, let's be honest. There's one group of line of business leaders that's greatly impacted by what's taking place in this change. It has to do with the fact that it's what many of you in our audience, the IT administrators, having to do. Not only do you have to manage your own teams and how you're enabling them for hybrid works, you're actually responsible and part of the group that's actually enabling the entire company. Now, these challenges are numerous, and our research highlighted several top tasks. To help us walk through this, I want to introduce Andrew Gross from Crestron, and we're going to talk through some of these that take place. Now, Andrew, Crestron has the Flex platform, which has a lot of touch points with IT administrators. So I believe that you have a great insight in terms of what's taking place. Let's talk about the shared room experience and this challenge of being safe. It's got to be a top of mind concern for these IT administrators. What do you see as some of those challenges taking place, and what are some of the ways that they can look to work within this new ecosystem?
Yeah, so Craig, we spoke a lot about today regarding trends and kind of what we know, what we don't know over the last couple of years. But one of the first things that's actually sticking and will stay for years to come is a greater focus on health and safety and sanitization. And that's true beyond the enterprise, right? But certainly since we're here to talk about the enterprise and what IT professionals can do to kind of support that trend is how do we bring safety and sanitization to our enterprise rooms? And how does technology support it, right? So I'm not referring mainly to cleaning practices or antimicrobial surfaces, but mainly specific to how can technology support and actually inform around clean places to work and meet and collaborate. And I kind of broke it down into three ways, and I'm seeing three main levels that enterprises are leveraging to start to deploy and adopt these levels of cleanliness and safety. The first level is very simple. It's use motion sensors. And in fact, it's so simple that the majority of states and cities around the country, they require motion sensors because of energy code. So it's about taking those motion sensors and just ensuring that the ones that were turning on and off your lights are integrated into your AV or UC system. What that does is it reduces touch, right? We want low touch or minimal touch type spaces. That's level 1. Level 2 is a way to now connect that motion sensor to your scheduling system. So Ilya was talking greatly about Teams panel. Great example of leveraging knowledge on the outside of the room, not just in the room. So take the information of who's in the room or is the room occupied and bring it to the outside. Show it on a calendar. And then you can take it to the 3rd level, which brings in our partners like Jabra, right? Where you can incorporate things like motion sensing, but also now people counting built into the camera at the front of the room. So I know the room's occupied. I'm telling people on the outside with scheduling panels. But now what I'm doing is I'm ensuring that the room is adhering to threshold occupancy. Because with that camera technology, I can set this room can only be used by 6 people at a safe maximum. And without just the people knowing inside, I can take that technology and that information and bring it to the outside with things like Teams panel from Crestron, because it shows the users before they enter the room if it's safe and if it's clean.
You know what's nice about that is it actually serves 2 different audiences in this information collection, right? You have the IT administrators that need to understand what's taking place from a macro level, and then you have those end users that need real-time information before they walk in and out, right? So safety winds up being this paramount idea, and it's a huge challenge. I understand what you're saying. Yeah. I love how you've broken that down. That's great. You know, let's go a little bit further now. So you kind of started to allude to this. Now here's the next frontier. It's the data that people need to make intelligent decisions now. And I'll give you an example. With hybrid work, the number of people in the office is really, really flexible now. It really changes. An office may have 50 people in on Monday, but then Tuesday they may have 500 people. How can an IT administrator accommodate this type of fluctuation taking place in that usage patterns?
Well, that speaks exactly to kind of what we're talking about, is the uncertainty, right? We don't know, and it's constantly dynamic, it's constantly changing. And so that data that we got from the safety and cleanliness example we just spoke about, that bleeds through to everything in the workplace. So instead of us, guessing or trying to project what's going to happen in 6 months to a year from now, rather, as IT professionals, instead of being that crystal ball, be students of the workplace, be students of the collaboration space, and enable yourself to analyze data that's across your entire enterprise and then evolve from it, right? That's kind of the big key here, is ensure that that data is being brought back to a central point. And when you talk about data, right, there's a couple different ways you can look at data and information, movement patterns within the workplace, and how then I can make decisions and be dynamic moving forward. Crestron talks a lot about firmware software upgrades. Everything's got to be up to date, running with the greatest, newest software and firmware to make sure it's safe, make sure it's got the greatest technology. But that's table stakes, right? I'm thinking that now we have to take it to the next level, is when we ensure that all of the technology in our conference spaces, in our collaboration rooms is connected, it's all communicating back, it's all network-based. Now what we're able to do is truly identify patterns, trends that are happening in the workplace. So that not only can I ensure that my technology is working today, but that it's working tomorrow and the next day and the day after that, and that it's working for my customer. As an IT professional, my customer are my employees. So it's about understanding which rooms are being used, how are they being used, what technology is being used in those spaces, how long are meeting rooms being optimized and actually being leveraged. And so when we can collect that type of data in a central platform, an example that we have is called Crestron XIO Cloud. It gathers data from not just Crestron devices, but Jabra devices, Microsoft devices, and it provides that data, all of those endpoint information pieces, to an IT professional to now not just, again, ensure that software and firmware is up to date, but that I can take it, analyze, and evolve my systems moving forward to work for my customer.
So when we talk to these line of business leaders, one of the things they brought up is they wanted to have flexibility of these platforms or to communicate with other platforms, of these personal spaces and of these shared spaces. Let me share a couple of stats and kind of put this in perspective right now. When we did an interview of end users in North America, they self-identified, over 2/3 said on a daily basis, they're using more than one meeting platform on a daily basis. But what was really insightful was this, is that 40% said these were IT managed situations. This is where IT had licenses for both one platform and another platform. And these people had to deal with the flexibility or the challenges of moving seamlessly between these platforms. How do you think about that in terms of the IT administrator challenge?
Well, I think a big reason for that is the more educated customer, the more educated user, right? You know, they're picky, and rightfully so. You know, when we're living now in this virtual collaboration meeting room, right? Our meeting rooms are now in the cloud. We need to be picky because we want to have an enhanced experience. But what Crestron Flex allows you to do is to bring a laptop and connect in HDMI and USB if I need to use another platform in that Teams room. So I standardized on the native, the 80, but I'm allowing the 20, the other platform. So when you take the hardware flexibility of something like that to join any platform using my laptop, I pair that with the Microsoft flexibility of Direct Guest Join to be able to join via software, WebEx or Zoom. I'm now opening up my rooms to be able to use any platform when they're needed to by the user. And what that does is not just give flexibility, right? That now drives adoption. And when you drive adoption of these meeting rooms because of the flexibility, that's where people feel more comfortable joining the meetings, they feel more ability to connect with their employees remotely, and it brings culture to a level that IT professionals are striving to achieve.
We've talked about a couple things here. The idea of making rooms safe to come into, the idea of leveraging and creating data that can be used for intelligent decisions. And now we're closing with this idea that the challenge of flexibility within those investments you're making so that you do feel you have a strategy that's flexible and the technology can adapt to that winds up being key. Andrew, thank you so much for sharing these insights. I appreciate it. So we've spoken through the situation, and then we talked about the complications that take place in this new hybrid work environment. Now let's move on to the recommendations and the best practices. Now, our research that we did in cooperation with Jabra did come down to this idea that focusing on a flexible strategy with adaptable technology is the key to winning in this situation. Now, companies that we observed really succeeding in this seem to focus on three functional areas. They were trying to remove fatigue by focusing on communication. They wanted to remove workplace friction by focusing on collaboration. And then they wanted to enable connection by focusing on culture. So all three of these played an important part of this. Now, in each of these areas, we came down to several strategies and recommendations. And to talk through this right now, I want to introduce Holger and Aranzab from Jabra, and we're going to share what they have in terms of insights from this piece. So let's go ahead and start off about communication. So Aranzab, talking about improving communication seems obvious, but the research concluded that this best outcome is when communication helps alleviate some of this meeting fatigue. Talk to me about what's that connection between those two.
Craig, thank you for having me and for this opportunity. You know, fatigue comes from poor quality experience, right? If I'm talking and you can't hear me properly, if I sound like I'm in a tin cup, you can't hear the timbre and tonality of my voice, there's a level of cognitive stress going on. If my video doesn't look good or if it's jumping around, you don't really see me very clearly, you're trying to figure out what am I saying, how's my body English, what's going on. That's all stress loading your brain while you're trying to be in the meeting. If we can remove that, we take a lot of that fatigue away because we let you and I have a natural conversation as if we were sitting next to each other like we are here. The other part, of that is Andrew is here, myself, we're having a group conversation. There's a number of folks on the screen. How do we make sure that they're all included and that they all feel like they are part of that meeting? This is where a whole new generation of video and audio technologies coupled with edge AI like Ilya alluded to and like Mark and Ken talked about, the experiences we enable, start to remove that fatigue and make that a really good, inclusive, equitable experience. And we've been pioneering new technology to enable this through the use of our multi-camera array technologies and other products, as you know, especially the audio leadership products that we've had for some time. The cameras also provide real-time data, and that's a completely new dimension that's become quite central to how we use meeting spaces now.
Holger, let me ask you this. So one of those challenges tied to that as well is how these end users need to switch locations, or even more challenging, might have to switch between platforms. Can you talk to me about how some of the Jabra technology can help alleviate this stress, this meeting fatigue, and enable better communications when moving around between locations?
I think when moving between locations, one of the best goals to strive for is continuity of experience for the end user, both for me locally, but also for you guys I'm participating with remotely. So, for example, make sure that a personal desktop type camera has similar features as a room camera. So the example could be it can capture and pop out a whiteboard or zoom in on an object you want to show, like you would do with a fixed content camera in a meeting room. Also consider to select what is comfortable. I mean, in the sense of connecting easily and adjust seamlessly to the use case. So think about, for example, a headset you can wear all day. It supports plug and play and integrates well with the client software of the platform you're using. It intelligently adjusts audio for communication on the go, but also for collaboration and concentration at your desk, or even entertainment in your living room. So for both the speakers and the microphones built into the headset, you want to adjust and switch intelligently to the context you're in. Just for switching between platforms, that was the other question you were having. Devices with a robust certification ensure the ability to seamlessly move between those platforms as well.
Now, let me go ahead and talk about this next area, which is collaboration. And Holger, I'm going to start with you here on this. So one of those things that we concluded was to enable better collaboration means removing some of this workplace friction. And I think we know what this means. And you alluded to this. There's nothing that's more challenging in a meeting when everyone cannot be heard or everyone cannot be seen. So what are some of the ways that the Jabra technology is helping to avoid these scenarios? And more importantly, trying to create inclusivity as a priority within those meetings?
So working together, we said it very often now in this setting here, should be frictionless, I would say, from a technology standpoint for the end user, right? So technology should never come into our way. Hybrid work adds the challenge that not everyone may be in the same room or accessing the meeting from a similar device like we heard earlier. So inclusivity in general is the right idea here. And to do it in a way that is equitable for everyone, you don't want just to give each other and each use case the same solution. You want to be able to provide features and functionality that meets the need for the situation you're in. So for example, when you're working from home, you want clear, crisp audio that deals with typical noises at home, like removing background distraction from a family member, a delivery man, and so forth. You also make the same true in a group situation. So not only everyone could be captured by video in a larger room, but also every person, like Ilya said, can be identified and heard clearly when he or she speaks. So this benefits both the person who is working from the remote location, like I'm doing right now from home, so he or she feels that they are included in the conversation as if I would be together with you guys in the room.
That's fantastic. When technology isn't front and center, but it just enables those conversations. You know, it makes me want to ask you a question. There's another great piece of technology in your cameras that I really like, and that's the 2 video stream capability that allows you to see content, for example, as side by side with people.
We worked with the Panacast 50 device to natively deliver dual video streams. So those same 3 cameras not only bring you everybody in terms of video, they also provide data and real-time content information, as Andrew alluded to, and you can identify an area. It could even be at a 90-degree angle. It'll pull it out, rectify it, and with Microsoft, for example, it'll be full-featured Microsoft whiteboard capability, so that the remote folks can see that and they can engage with that information and they don't feel like they're being left behind, right? That notion of inclusivity really needs to include all aspects of that collaboration and meeting.
That's fantastic. You know, in the ebook, we speak about this as enabling those in-between moments. And the example I hear you saying right now is even in the meeting, the moment where you might be standing up and stepping to the whiteboard. You're removed from maybe the primary camera view, but you're still part of the conversation. Or I can see that analog input and still participate in that, right?
Exactly right. And I think that you know, you touched earlier about the notion of equity and equitability.
Yeah.
And this kind of touches on all of those human feelings of being included. That's really what we're trying to make sure is preserved.
So we have some really good solutions here, and I love that we're trying to do it. And I want to try and close the gap for our IT audience. So Holger, how can we help ensure these IT administrators are getting the right solutions that they need?
I would really start with considering gear that is really enterprise grade and suits professionals, right? And you can't be wrong by choosing certified devices, because through this certification process, vendors like Jabra, Microsoft, Crestron, we have already aligned and testified best user experience and highest degree of interoperability in order to make sure that technology never comes into our way. So this literally reduces friction through both intelligent video and audio features and allow end users to focus on the conversation, being present in the collaboration and not technology. It will facilitate also easy transition between different activities. Like we said, we as users always shift between deep concentration to focus, to prepare, collaboration, and maybe sometimes also entertainment to relax ourselves in this more complex world.
Everyone, that was fantastic. I really appreciate the feedback. Now, what we were able to do here is we were able to talk through the situation as shared with us from Ken and Mark. We then took a look at the complications of hybrid work. Ilya spoke to us through some of those challenges that end users are seeing. And Andrew, you walked us through those challenges IT administrators have to adapt and deal with. And then finally, what the research taught us and the recommendations were shared from Holger and Arnzab. We really appreciate that. We want to thank you guys for being here. This is a fantastic group of very smart people, and I hope this worked out well in that you were able to pick up on what we found to be some of the best practices to create a flexible strategy and one that has adaptable technology to enable you to succeed in hybrid work. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thank you. Very informative. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris.